Today's collaborative inspection approach to hospital construction webinar, hosted by the Department of Healthcare Access and Information, HCAI, Office of Statewide Hospital Planning and Development, OSHPD, Hospital Building Safety Board, HBSB. During the webinar, we will provide helpful tips and guidance for developing a culture of collaboration and improving effective communication for successful completion of hospital construction projects. You will learn how each role can contribute to any project. We will cover different perspectives by the owner for how to lay the groundwork for project success, the design professional of record for how the construction team leader can foster a collaborative inspection environment, the contractor for steps to ensure inspections pass the first time, the IOR for how inspectors can demonstrate and inspect to pass approach to their inspections, and the HCAI OSHPD for how the office supports a collaborative inspections environment. At the end of the webinar, a certificate of completion will be emailed from the GoToWebinar only to the registered attendees who logs in and attends the day of the webinar, which is today. This webinar provides 1.5 credit for AIA, so if you want to get the AIA credit, please log in with your email. This means that if you are attending the webinar as a group, the system will not recognize the individuals. For your use, we have uploaded a handout. To find it, go to the handout tab or material tab. Basically, there is an icon with paperclip, and there you will find the uploaded PDF file, which you will need to download. You are here for about an hour and a half. We will have the presentation for about an hour and leave a half hour for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Since the number of the participants is very high, we might not be able to answer to all of your questions. We recommend for you to write your questions to the question tab located into the GoToWebinar toolbox. If we don't finish to answer to all of your questions, we will send an email to the attendees and provide the answers. The email address is hbsbsupportstaff@hcai.ca.gov, which you will find at the end of this presentation. If you are experiencing transmission difficulties, go ahead and log back in using difficulties on our hand. Today for presenters, we have HBSB and HCAI speakers, Michael Davis, Gary Danger, Belinda Young, Cody Bartley, and myself, Monica Colosi. The beginning of the presentation will start with Michael Davis. So that being said, let's start. And Michael, if you're ready, I'm passing to you the presentation.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate that. I'd like to begin by extending a welcome to everyone and thanking you for taking a time out of your day to attend this presentation. Today's presentation, as was mentioned, is a joint effort by OSHPD and the California Hospital Building Safety Board. Our objective today is to draw attention to and provide helpful guidance on how to establish and maintain a culture and environment of collaboration on a hospital construction project, and more specifically, in connection with inspections and jurisdictional compliance. Think about this. We all share a common goal in a hospital construction project. That goal, what is it? It's to provide a safe, sustainable building where healthcare can be provided to the community and serve as a safe haven for medical care in the event of a natural disaster. How do we achieve that goal? Well, we build upon the three foundational pillars of quality construction. The first is good solid code. However, that's theoretical. The second is good solid plan review, but that's theoretical also. And thirdly is good solid field inspection. This is where the theoretical becomes actual, factual, validated. So successful inspections that pass, serve as the indicator that we're meeting that goal of building a safe, sustainable building for the provision of healthcare. This is all about working collaboratively together to achieve inspections that pass. see here. There we go. There we go. As a preview by way of today's presentation, as Monica had mentioned, we have Gary Dunger, who's the Executive Director, Design and Construction at Cedars-Sinai. We have Belinda Young, a Senior Principal and Regional Leader of Healthcare at HOK Architecture. Cody Bartley, who's Sacramento Healthcare Market Leader at DPR Construction. Myself, I'm a Certified Hospital Inspector and CEO Emeritus of Davis HBC. And Monica Colosi, who is an OSHPD Compliance Officer with the Inspection Services Unit. We'll be considering from the perspective of ownership, the designer, the contractor, the inspection group, and then finally OSHPD, of how we can all contribute to that collaborative environment. So you can see everyone on the team has a role in successful inspections. Everyone can contribute toward that. Ownership. You initiate, guide, oversee, and select and hire the construction team. So you strategize to pass successful inspections. Design professionals of record. You design the product, so you design to pass. The contractor and subcontractors, this is where you're actually turning that theoretical into something physical, so you build to pass. The IOR and the testing lab, the inspection group, we inspect to pass, and we'll have more on that in just a few minutes on exactly what that means. And then OSHPD field staff, they support to pass by the support that they give. It's time for us now to move on to our first section. So let's give our attention now to Gary Dunger as he considers this topic from the standpoint of the perspective of the owner.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm honored to be able to spend some time with you this afternoon. This is a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart. As everybody knows on this call, that California hospitals are generally considered the most complex buildings in the world to construct. We have structural implications, of course, but the mechanical, plumbing, electrical systems, and equipment in the hospitals are very unique and very complex. A hospital is a building that gets constructed with the concept of, if the building is on fire, you don't leave. The challenges associated with building these buildings is pretty amazing and pretty specific. Went too far, excuse me. A little delay there. So from a owner's perspective, and I haven't been an owner that long or an owner's representative that long, but I have a lot of experience in healthcare construction. You know, owners are ultimately ultimately responsible for the construction projects, ensuring the facilities are safe and compliant. From an inspection standpoint, they're responsible for providing effective inspections and approaching inspections as not a regulatory hurdle, but a strategic investment. Owners need to align with that in mind, owners need to align the inspection process with the project goals. You're going to hear me say this multiple times. Owners need to stay actively involved throughout the construction process. They are unique and required to set quality standards, hire competent inspection teams, and of course allocate proper resources. I'll talk a little bit about that during the day. Construction team roles, you know, the hospital owner is the manager of the project. He's the Dave Roberts of the two-time world champion Los Angeles Dodgers, soon to be three-peat Los Angeles Dodgers, responsible for setting project goals, securing the funding for the project, ensuring compliance with the standards, and so on. Architect and engineer, the design team, Belinda's going to talk a little bit about. They design the project, create the specs, interpret codes, respond to RFIs, and so on. Contractor, Cody has the easy job, right? The contractor builds the building in accordance with the plans and specs, manages the contractors, maintains the construction schedule, and so on. But the fourth person in this team, which is consistently or historically called the OAC, is the inspector. And I would recommend we approach the OAC from an OACI standpoint. The inspector is a critical team member in a successful construction project. They're certified professionals who verify the construction meets code requirements, maintain the quality control of the project, document compliance, and of course report to the architect, owner, and to HCAI. Let's talk a little bit about what could go wrong. The owner is responsible for ensuring the quality, safety, and compliance throughout the project. To do this, you really need to stay involved in the whole construction process. But something that owners don't historically get involved with too much are inspections. Owners need to stay involved in inspections. They need to establish the standards, obviously hire competent teams, and allocate sufficient resources like administrative support or technology support and so on. This is required to, make sure that we provide that long-term durability and maintainability of these critical systems and equipment that hospitals are reliant on. Hospital construction is unique. I think everybody knows that. We serve a vulnerable population, obviously. This vulnerable population has zero tolerance for equipment failures. Something as simple as fire alarm testing can have a significant negative impact to an NICU patient who can't tolerate the flashing or the sounds. There are significant regulatory demands for hospital construction, as well as, of course, other aspects of running a hospital. The Joint Commission, of course, CMS, OSHPD, California Public Health, County Public Health, local planning department, local fire departments. These are all agencies that regulate hospitals and construction. And these are groups that need to be taken into account. Hospital construction is very unique. The medical gas system, for instance, cannot tolerate contamination. I'm familiar with a case, an instance where there was a cross connection. That cross connection with medical air to an oxygen resulted in a patient death because they weren't being perfused adequately. Of course, we have emergency power supply systems, specialized ventilation for operating rooms and airborne infection isolation rooms, integrated technology with building management systems and things like that that maintain our facilities. But no OSHPD webinar is complete without a regulatory slide. And so this is what I'm going to focus on a little bit. The requirement for inspection is the result of past failures, as are a lot of regulatory requirements where people died to get the code changed. The same is true with requirement for inspection. And I'll read to you the California Health and Safety Code, which is statute. This is law, it's not a regulation. The law says the hospital governing board or authority shall provide for and require competent and adequate inspection during construction by an inspector satisfactory to the architect or structural engineer and to the department and to OSHPD. So let's talk a little bit about that. This inspection is not optional. It's required by law. It's required by the Health and Safety Code. Requires the inspector to act under the architect's or engineer's direction and ultimately to the hospital governing board or authority, to the owner. And of course, they also have an inspection reporting line to HCAI. So I want to break some of these concepts down a little bit. The principal duties of the IOR, of course, as we mentioned, are verifying compliance with the plans, making sure that the project gets built in accordance with the plans, but also codes, making sure that the project complies with code. And a critical aspect is documenting issues and coordinating with the construction team to ensure safety during the project or construction life. I like to have a component or a section that talks about ethics. This isn't something that gets brought up a lot, but inspection ethics is something that's very important, and from an owner standpoint is something to consider. A commitment by the inspector to independence in making their inspections, to be honest in their reporting. An inspector that isn't influenced by an owner or by a contractor to overlook things or to brush something under the rug is not something that we want. Conversely, we don't want inspectors that make stuff up or exceed what they think or what the code or plans and specs require. So this is something that speaks to ethics to me. Now I want to break down the other aspect of the health and safety code. It talks about adequate and competent inspection. Those are actually complementary terms, but the Title 24 adds a third concept of continuous inspection. So adequate and competent, adequate speaks to time, the amount of time spent, and competent speaks to knowledge. So obviously the most knowledgeable inspector is not effective on a construction project if they don't spend any time on the project, if they don't spend adequate time walking the project, getting out of the construction trailer. And conversely, an inspector that isn't knowledgeable or isn't appropriate for your construction project can spend all the time they want on the project and still not provide the level of service that we need if they're not competent. Continuous is another concept that speaks to the amount of time on the project. So I'll break that out a little further. Yes, I will, as soon as it switches. There we go. Continuous inspection as compared to periodic inspection like traditional city and county building departments is different in healthcare. And this is based on past failures, lots of past failures that resulted in catastrophic building failures and death. Continuous inspection means real-time oversight while items that can only be inspected as they're being placed, requires that constant presence, like concrete placement, for instance. But other things that can be inspected completely after they're installed doesn't necessarily require the constant presence, but does require the IOR to spend time walking these projects on a regular basis to look at those things. Periodic inspection speaks to an inspection request program. So when the contractor is identified that something is complete and ready for inspection, they would request the inspection and IOR would provide that level of inspection. And then the third inspection type is TIO. So there are things on the TIO that require specific testing, inspection of your construction project. The benefits, obviously, some of the benefits are obvious. Enhanced safety, financial protection, prevent costly rework. The concept of continuous inspection is to catch stuff early. Don't let it get built and then come out and inspect it and say, no, this needs to be reworked. That's a financial hit to owners as well as, of course, the contractor and all parties. Obviously, maintaining the budget and maintaining the schedule are benefits of proper inspection, and long-term facility functionality is an ultimate goal here. Keep having a little delay, sorry about that. What are some of the consequences? These are things that are obviously both as well obvious. Inadequate inspections can and have resulted in catastrophic structural failures, dangerous equipment or system malfunctions. Something as simple as a TV bracket that was improperly installed has resulted in a patient death when the TV broke and fell and hit the patient who was sitting directly under the TV in the head and ended up killing her. I mentioned earlier, medical gas cross connection has resulted in a patient death that I'm familiar with. Contamination, obviously, other things. All of these things can contribute to these safety risks. And work that gets done and improperly and is identified post-occupancy is also particularly problematic. This can cost 4 to 5 times the amount to correct as it would addressing it during construction. Not to mention things like regulatory fines, insurance premiums going on, and the ever popular legal lawsuit that might get filed against the hospital by patients or staff that are affected. So my last slide here, I'm going to talk a little bit about some best practices, some suggestions I have from the owner's perspective. Stay involved. Stay involved in the whole project, but be involved in inspection as well. I think that's one area where owners aren't as involved as they may be with the rest of the construction project. As an owner, share your expectations with everybody. Hire the appropriate inspector for your job. Just because an inspector has an OSHPD license and is certified doesn't mean they may be appropriate for your particular project. Allocate adequate resources like administrative help and technology help and stuff like that, and maintain an executive level support for the inspection process. Make sure that the entire team knows that inspection is important to you as the owner or owner's representative. I think things like developing healthcare specific inspection checklists can be valuable. Inspectors making sure they maintain detailed inspection records and reports. Utilizing technology, software programs that help track inspections, inspection pass and inspection fail rates can be valuable. And then establish clear inspection scheduling protocols with the entire team. And let's not forget closeout. Closeout is oftentimes overlooked. Holding regular progress meetings that OAC include the I, include the inspector with these regular meetings. Maintain open communication channels with the IORs. Let them know that they can come to you directly when they're experiencing problems with the design team, the contractor, or with any other process. Include IOR inspection request program in the contracts that you sign with your builders. Begin to close out, not at the end of the project, but at the beginning of the project. And then lastly, lessons learned. If you come across something that is valuable for future projects, document that and revisit it on occasion. That's it for me. If you have any questions about my presentation, please put them in the questions console on the GoToWebinar, and at the end, we'll go through and make sure we answer all those questions if possible. At this step, I'm going to turn over to my dear friend Belinda Young, who will talk about the design professional point of view for successful projects.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks everyone for joining this webinar. As an architect, I've had the honor to work on several hospitals throughout my career, and I've seen how well a project can go with a trusted and a collaborative team. I think design professionals of record, especially our consultant and engineering partners, would agree that collaboration, early engagement, and process alignment play key roles in successful inspections during construction. So why collaboration? Some days I think the words integrated and collaborative are overused in our industry, and actions and behaviors often default back to siloed approaches. However, when there is true collaboration, that is when the magic happens. Whether you are the DPOR, IOR, contractor, owner, or HCAI, we work as a collective for a common purpose, which is the project. Information is not guarded or hidden, but shared freely, and when something doesn't go as planned, we don't assign fault, but figure out solutions together. There's absolutely no room for egos, but always room for continuous improvement, and we learn from one another by leveraging our collective expertise. This builds trust and accountability, which are foundational in successful projects. It's awesome when people make an effort to understand each other's perspective and advocate for one another. I love hearing when a GC says we can't change that detail because the finish has to align a certain way, or when I hear a DPOR say we should have coordinated our drawings and specs better and had the right model number so that the IOR could do his material ID without needing an ACD or an NMA. These comments reveal that we have each other's best interest in mind. So I'm also trying to forward, there we go. So early engagement. There are true benefits with early engagement, but it often comes with an investment by the owner to bring the right parties together at the most beneficial time. As Gary mentioned, allocating adequate resources is important. There have been many discussions about how much pre-con is too much, when to bring on trade partners for their constructability review, or when to engage HCAI or IORs for their input. There certainly needs to be a plan in place for when it makes sense to activate the various parts of a team, but experience has shown that when there's early engagement, there's opportunities to look at the design from a higher level to determine whether there are issues that need to be resolved with enough time to course correct. When you bring in HCAI, IORs, contractor, and trade partners early in the design process, you can review proposed details prior to plan review, leverage their expertise, and understand the means and methods for how things will get installed or built. The details included in the permit set have a much better chance of being used without need for ACD or an MA modification as a result of shop drawings or subcontractor preference. This type of proactive constructability review avoids costly change orders and delays in the field. That extra time and resources spent in coordination early on is meant to save time and resources in construction for net savings to the project. So for inspection process alignment, so far I've talked about the aspirations for collaboration and early engagement. This slide, however, highlights the importance of inspection process alignment. The inspection process needs to be carefully planned in collaboration with the IOR's input during the design phase and while formulating the testing, inspection, and observation program. It's important to obtain HCAI and IOR concurrence on material ID, inspection cadence, and tracking methods. Timing of these activities have significant impacts to construction sequencing, and the goal is to have everyone on board with the same understanding of expectations and requirements. This allows for a more durable construction schedule and plan. If your project includes prefabrication or offsite work, there needs to be a clear inspection process outlined for offsite and onsite work, what prefab components need to be inspected once installed in the field, and how continuous chain of custody and sign-off is to be maintained. There are both high-tech and low-tech solutions that can be implemented, as seen in the photos, where both old-school whiteboards and QR scan codes are utilized to track everything. This can be a very exacting and tedious process, but a really important one. As DPORs, we can help facilitate IOR inspections with accurate and updated information on drawings and specs. Contractors can also help by having a strong QC program in place to confirm that everything is built per contract documents and ready for inspection. So another thing that's really important is personal knowledge. So HCAI modified their verified compliance report section C to reinforce the expectation of on-site presence, review of observational reports by other team members, and review of test and inspection reports. We can't just phone it in and expect IORs to be the only ones confirming that the project has been installed per approved drawings and specs. Having DPOR eyes consistently on the construction allows for timely notification and resolution of items needing attention, being proactive rather than reactive to issues that come up. Personal knowledge also enables effective problem solving because you've seen the area or item in question. On-site presence allows for more continuous interaction and coordination with HCAI and the inspection team. One thing to note again is the importance of allocating sufficient resources in construction administration. Standard design agreements often default to monthly or weekly site visits, often with the owner's pressure to reduce design fees for construction administration. I hope there's now more recognition by owners on how important it is to invest in adequate staff resources from the design team throughout CA for that continued observation and active triaging of design issues that inevitably arise. So part of this too is active management of the TIO. As mentioned earlier, the TIO program needs to be developed early on and ultimately approved prior to construction start. The TIO is authored by the architect or engineer of record, but should be informed by consultants, owner, contractor, IOR, and HCAI as well. It's important to review the milestones and stages required with the owner to incorporate any desired phase sign-offs, especially if it impacts hospital operations. The image shown here is the Excel PDF version of the TIO, which will soon belong to the Museum of Oshkosh History once the electronic eTIO is launched. I can't wait for the day when we no longer have to snip and paste sign-offs with every TIO revision. Until then, the main point of emphasis here is that there needs to be active management of the TIO. It is not something to be put in a drawer and pulled out at the end of construction. Instead, we need to obtain timely sign-offs from the IOR and HCAI field staff as work is completed. and update and track revisions throughout construction. One piece of advice is to do a periodic audit of all the DPORs listed on the project, remove or supplant anyone that is no longer active, and gather final verified compliance reports as specific scopes are completed. It is very hard and difficult to gather these VCRs at the end and track down third-party engineers or people that have luckily moved on to retirement, especially for projects with long durations. So one of the things I wanted to share was just a short lessons learned in my past. So here's an email I have from a project 15 years ago. I redacted the names of the guilty parties, but maybe one of my favorite IORs is out there on this webinar right now, and it will bring back great memories. Unfortunately, this email could have been written yesterday too, and it has to do with fire alarm not being ready for testing or HCAI review as scheduled, and the contractor is asking to push out the ACO visit. Of course, there are so many reasons why things may not be ready despite all good efforts and intentions. The point to emphasize here is that everyone should recognize the domino effect of schedule changes. HCAI field staff have numerous projects to oversee, and their time is very structured and limited. While they try to accommodate and be flexible for the sake of the project, oftentimes they are not able to meet the dates we request. This also puts the IORs in a tough position because they were trying to have all the stars aligned to make sign-off happen, but are sometimes left with the inability to do so if design and construction aren't ready. The lesson learned here is to plan ahead and leave enough contingency time for the unexpected to happen so that things aren't down to the wire, causing undue stress and chaos. Nevertheless, in this email, the IOR and contractor are still working together as a team to try and solve the issue. And in the end, we were able to get the phase completed on time and turned over to the owner. So to that point, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the soft skills because I think respect for people and processes is one of the key things to successful project delivery. With the lessons learned example, it's important to be respectful of people's time and commitments. If you are prepared and plan ahead, you should be able to avoid creating emergent situations or make your lack of planning someone else's problem. When we have requests, or maybe they are actually favors, be complete, meaningful, and timely with those requests. Tempers may flare in high-stress situations, but it's important to be objective in describing issues and avoid making the situation personal. And finally, be grateful and don't take people for granted. With that right mindset, everyone will try to provide value and do their best on behalf of the project. And finally, it really is about true teamwork. My last slide sums up why I do what I do and why I can still sleep at night. It's an honor and a tremendous responsibility to design a hospital. In partnership with the owner, contractor, HCAI, and IORs, we build facilities that help save lives that are also meant to be the lifeboats in emergency disaster situations. The amount of scrutiny, inspection, documentation, quality control, and high expectations are all elevated given the importance of the hospital needing to stay functional. We all can sleep better at night, knowing that we have an all-star team and knowing that inspections were done collaboratively with care and attention to the approved plans and specs. So there you go. Now I'll pass it along to Cody, who will have his perspective on being the GC on the job.
All right, thanks, Belinda. So we're going to call this section Build to Pass, and we're going to talk about the role of the GC and subcontractors that put the work into place. There we go. I like what Gary said earlier. This should be the easy part. You put the work into place as it's shown, but it's not that easy. So what as a contractor can we do to help this process? And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is focused on this idea of quality control. Contractor performs quality control to verify compliance with project plans and specs. General contractor is not an inspector, but we need to do our part in the inspection process. The IOR inspection should be an assurance to verify the QC has been performed and the work is in compliance with plans, specs, and Apple Code standards. So what is our goal on inspections? We would like to pass 100% of inspections the first time, right? That's an ambitious goal, but that should be our goal. So we're going to step through a couple of ideas that aid in that goal. Belinda talked about this earlier. I'm going to talk about it again from a contractor side, but pre-construction. Quality control has many layers that don't just apply to the build. If we can be involved in pre-construction, we can start the alignment with the IOR and expectations during design. That involves constructability reviews, looking for opportunities in the drawings, making sure we have all the right details in the drawings, helping with the phasing. We see the final step or the final condition. Is there something interim that needs to be shown in the drawings that needs to be signed off as kind of an intermediate step? But creating a project-specific inspection plan with buy-in from all parties involved before you break ground is a collaborative approach that encourages participation and success. Pre-construction is an investment, but what is that investment getting you? We're trying to bring certainty to the process. And that's where this design assist, design build type of mentality is something that we push for. We see our project success increase in this collaborative environment. But one of the questions we want to ask ourselves is, do we have the installing subcontractor in the room during pre-construction? We spend a lot of time and money getting through the design and permitting process because the budgets are tight at that time. But if we get a permitted code compliant set of drawings and then we go to buy out that trade to get the installing subcontractor on board, he won the project in a competitive environment. Day one, he hits the project and says, I can only meet that number if we change these details. That's when change gets introduced to the project. The team's under pressure to get an ACD approved. There's schedule impacts. There's money on the line. This is a tough subject for me. Referencing back to December, we had a full board meeting with all the HCAI and HBSB staff. A third of all change orders or ACDs got attributed to contractor's option. To me, that's tough to understand because it's really not an elective option if you're on that project team. There's time and money associated with that ACD. So how can we bring the installing subcontractor alignment earlier in the process, before the point of release? One of the other things I want to talk about is mock-ups. Mock-ups are also an investment, but what do they provide? They ensure alignment of expectations and provide the opportunity to review inspection sequence. There's a lots of different types of mock-ups. We can do standalone mock-ups. This is a little bit larger in scale. We can do first in place mock-ups. Even stepping back, we can, at DPR, we have something called a DFOW, or Distinguishable Features of Work. It's a document that aggregates the details, the specifications, but it facilitates a discussion about the expectations of the final product. This facilitates IOR and architectural alignment with the first in place. And for the slide, all right. The QC process, when does that start? It starts with the person putting the work into place. He's your first set of eyes. He needs to know what he's putting in place. After that is signed off, a general contractor is going to look at the work product against the design criteria with another set of eyes before the IOR is brought through. Then the IOR comes through, right? But we want the subcontractor to put the work into place to know the expectations and sign off on the position that the work or product they've put in place is in alignment with the design. As a general contractor, we're another set of eyes. We sign off on the work before the IOR is brought through. The IOR should not be the only eyes that or entity that we rely on to inspect the work. The scheduled benefits if inspections are predictable, and the relationship with your IOR will be better if they know the project team is doing their part in the inspection process. Some of the things I have up here on the slide, this can be a simple Excel spreadsheet, right, where sub initials and then the GC initials. We've moved from that over to barcodes, right? But the idea is just that there's inspection, that their eyes are being put on this before you're bringing the IOR through. Having the alignment of what your eyes are looking at also helps this. So creating this QC checklist with your IOR. What are the hot buttons that he's going to be looking at to make sure you're doing your part of the QC before he's brought through? What helps make this successful? Okay. Contractor needs the DPOR team willing and ready to answer questions or respond to RFIs on field conditions. This is referencing back to what Belinda was saying about eyes in the field. Communication and explanation of details goes a long way. Sometimes it's just having that expertise from an architect or engineer of record to explain the condition, kind of step somebody through it so that everybody has an understanding of this. Part of the IOR duty on healthcare is continuous inspection. I'd like to request that the IORs, if you have a question on something, see something that you have a question on, don't wait until the inspection request to bring it up. Let's have those open lines of communication where we can talk about these things before time. And the QC checklist. This is one of the things I already talked about on the last slide, but developing this with your IOR, knowing what he's looking at, knowing what we're supposed to be looking at ahead of time. This is alignment. But now what happens when QC goes wrong here? Failed inspections cause schedule implications, cost, and there's a lot of safety issues involved with rework. This picture here is something that hopefully we never come across in our career again, but this was something that had been signed off on the previous project, was left in the condition. As we're doing an investigation for the next project, we see this. You think of how many eyes walk past this condition before, like, to get to that point in time. We should be doing better about QC. I have an example on a past project. You think about drywall screws used in an electrical wall clip. It had made it through, it got caught on the ceiling close-up inspection, but it had made it through the electrical inspection. It had made it through the QC above ceiling inspection, like the QC part of that, got caught on the final inspection. In order to reach that little black screw head that was in the electrical clip really up high on the wall, at that point in time, we're dropping ductwork, and all this was because somebody walked by and didn't think that the type of screw that they were putting in the clip mattered. We should be catching those things on our QC checklist. The safety aspect is something I want to talk about here because we're great about scheduling, sequencing work the first time we go through. Rework is out of sequence work. That's usually somebody trying to get it done as quick as possible. They're trying to make it not cost as much as possible. That's when corners get cut, and we see a lot of our recordable incidents attributed to rework. In a perfect world, we've seen the tax schedules, and it's kind of a reference to a train moving through a project. When one of the cars in the front comes off to an abrupt stop, everything behind the train gets derailed. And that's why it's so important for us to pass inspections on the first time, and why we need to do our part to make sure that we're setting that culture and condition up. But this is back to what Belinda said, and she ended on the same slide that I'm going to end on. QC is a team effort. The subcontractors and the general contractors need to have robust QC plans to ensure compliance with plans, specs, and code. Creating visual checklists that people putting the work in place have to sign. Having a QC person sign off next to that prior to the IOR. All this is building a relationship and opening those lines of communication. Having an IOR and having them look at your QC checklist that you're working on in advance of the inspection. Does it cover what they expect, or are there other things that they'd like to see you check off the list before that? But empowering the team to ask questions about the work as they see it going in place. And we need the DPR to be able to respond to questions and provide certainty when concerns are presented. Sometimes the DPR is just acting as an arbitrator. IORs place a lot of confidence in the design team, and having their expertise when things are questions helps facilitate that inspection process. The graphic you see here in the bottom right is one of the more technically advanced graphics for it, but having a visual so that the project team knows how you're doing on inspections. If you start having problems with your pass rate on IRs the first time, there should be an immediate red flag, a regroup. Let's talk about this as a team. We need to be doing better because this is going to have schedule and cost implications if we don't get the QC right. On that note, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Davis here. He's going to talk about the role of the IOR.
Thank you, Cody. So let's switch gears now and start talking about this subject from the standpoint of the IOR. There we go. As we get started in this consideration this afternoon, let's make one mental note that inspectors need to have a collaborative approach. They need to have an inspect to pass mentality. Well, for our purposes this afternoon, the collaborative inspection approach for an inspector is the same as the inspect to pass approach. So keep that in mind if you would. Inspect to pass. What attitude should an inspector have toward a project or a project team? What does inspect to pass mean for any inspector or IOR or special inspector? What does it not mean? What are the principles and practices that serve as a foundation of the inspect to pass approach? How are these principles put into action? And what can make a collaborative inspection approach challenging, and how does that inspector deal with it? So that's just a basic preview of what we'll consider over the next few minutes. The mental attitude. A key to success for an inspector is the mental attitude with which you approach your inspection duties. It all starts right here. How do you view your role within the overall framework of the construction team? How do you view the other project team members? Think about this. How do you view the contractor? Just take that for an example. Do you view him as the enemy, the dark side, the opposition? An adversarial relationship does not foster an efficient and effective work environment. On the other hand, a collaborative relationship does. But note, this takes effort on both sides to maintain that positive collaborative relationship. How do you view designers? According to Title 24, Part 1, IORs and inspectors take direction from them. Only the designer can interpret the drawings, never the inspector. And this makes sense since the final product or the completed hospital building is the physical manifestation of the architect and engineer's conceptual designs. So only they can answer those questions. How do you view ownership? Well, this is who you're working for and this is who's paying your bills. So we have a fiduciary responsibility to ownership. The entire construction team does because this is their project. Inspectors owe ownership adequate and competent inspection at the very minimum. Ownership deserves to be kept accurately informed. We need to make sure that the owner is getting the product that they're paying the contractor to build. They're depending upon the IOR to check that and ensure that. And inspectors should operate in such a way to not cause any unnecessary delays in construction. So as you're dealing with these, with the entire team, remember that your goal is to get the project finished on time and get the doors open so that healthcare can be provided to the community. How do you view OSHPD and the field staff? Well, even though you may not see eye to eye with them all the time, their position does deserve our respect. But on the other hand, keep in mind that you're not OSHPD. You're certified by OSHPD. So we are not the authority having jurisdiction as an IOR or a special inspector. We're simply certified as being qualified and capable of inspecting the projects. So the key thought here is, how do you view your role as IOR on the project? What does that phrase inspect to pass mean to you? When some inspectors hear this, they may errantly form the wrong idea and tune out. So here, let's clarify quickly what inspect to pass means. Inspect to pass is the mental attitude with which you approach your inspection duties. It's the philosophical approach to inspection. When this philosophical approach is put into action, inspect to pass is the embodiment of the collaborative, communicative, and proactive or anticipatory approach to inspection. Inspect to pass is project-centric, not ego-centric. Now, having said what it does mean, let's contrast that with what it does not mean. So it does not mean that the IOR is giving the contractor a free pass to do things incorrectly. It does not mean that the IOR is looking the other way or turning a blind eye to non-compliant work. It does not mean that the IOR is going to be a pushover. It does not mean that an inspection will pass when the actual work installed does not match the approved construction documents or does not comply with minimum code requirements. It does not mean that OSHPD now wants all IORs to pass inspection requests at all costs. That's not what we're talking about here. Let's consider now the principles of the inspect to pass concepts. There's three basic principles. The first is collaboration, the second is communication, and the third is proactivity. Let's consider those in turn. Collaboration. To collaborate means to work jointly with others or together with them, especially in an intellectual endeavor. It involves cooperation and contribution to a joint project or the attainment of a common goal. It takes a team of people to build out hospitals, as we've been discussing. How the IOR should collaborate with that team is important. First, an IOR needs to have a team mentality. Remember, as an IOR, you're part of that team, an important part, but just a single part. Remember also, when considering collaboration, that we have responsibility to ownership, as we've already mentioned. They're paying us for a job to be performed, and we owe them that responsibility. We also have a responsibility to the public. We're licensed by the state and have a moral responsibility to the people of California to see to it that the hospital is constructed in a safe manner. And we have a responsibility to Title 24, Part 1, to take for our legal responsibility to work under and take direction from the DPOR. So keep those aspects in mind as you consider collaboration. We have responsibility toward all these different parties. Let's consider the next, communication. Communication for an IOR to the construction team should always be open and transparent at all times. It should be honest, should be timely. We'll talk more about this in a moment. Also, think about this in communication, delivering bad news. Now, that's a side effect of being an IOR that sometimes you have to do. You're caught delivering bad news. How you do that matters. So always, it's best when delivering bad news tactfully and delivering it without malice or celebration. You can say how you say something can impact definitely how someone receives the information. And bad news is better received when offered with some potential solutions. Keep that in mind. So they're very important that we maintain that good communication on the project. Another aspect, a side point here, is the project delivery method can affect the chains of communication. They can affect the chain of communication, but it does not affect the responsibility. So if, for example, in a design build, you're asked to copy the contractor on all your communications with the architect, that's okay. That's done by means of its delivery method. But remember, the architect always remains in charge of their duties there. All right. Oh, we got hit a slide. Also, proactivity is the third foundational pillar of having an inspect to pass approach. Proactivity includes being diligent about walking your projects regularly. As an IOR, you should be performing observation walks of our projects on a regular basis. For large projects, be out there once or twice a day to walk the project. Small projects, stop by regularly and look at the progress. Only by seeing it can you be proactive. Be in constant communication with the superintendent regarding any potential deviations, deficiencies, or non-compliance. So keep that communication flowing. Early notification, as Cody had mentioned. And if you're truly proactive and the contractor is responsive, at that point, an IR becomes just a formality because you've already looked at it. You've already worked out the kinks and it's in good shape. Let's consider now how, our next slide, how the philosophy is put into action. We have the philosophy of being an inspect to pass approach does affect all phases of construction, pre-construction, construction, and closeout. What can we do for pre-construction? Let's see. So prior to starting a project, in order to maintain the inspect to pass approach, you'll want to read the specs, get familiar with the plans, get familiar with everything. Review the submittals early in advance in pre-construction phase. Become thoroughly familiar with the approved drawings. Seek clarification from the DPOR early on any confusing details that you may be coming up against. Meet the construction team, engage with the construction team, and be a part of the OSHPD pre-con all in the pre-construction phase. These are ways you can start that inspect to pass approach. For the construction phase, continually watch work being installed in the field and ask questions when something doesn't look right. Look over the TIO every day to ensure that nothing is being missed. Hold many pre-construction meetings well in advance of the start of a new trade. Hold pre-installation meetings with the general superintendent and trade foreman and review all the expectations at that time. IORs are recommended you attend the OAC or OACI meeting, as we've been discussing. Hold project closeout preparation meetings well in advance to help smooth the way to closeout. Inspect mock-up installations thoroughly so that expectations are clearly established. And here's something else in the actual construction phase. Never weaponize your inspections as a way to get back at the contractor or the project. There could be a personality conflict with the contractor, or there could even be disagreements with the hospital over payment of services. Any number of things could come up, but never weaponize your inspections. Do not direct the contractor, that's another important thing, but be willing to share knowledge and experience with them. And then for the closeout phase, the main point here is do not wait until weeks or months before the completion date to start putting closeout documentation together. You want to start that very early. The closeout process starts the day construction starts. Begin putting all the closeout documentation together right from the very beginning. For our next slide, what can make the inspect to pass mentality challenging? Well, you could have an uncooperative contractor, inexperienced contractor, an uninvolved DPOR, ownership pushing speedy inspections over compliance, or owners not being willing to pay for a sufficient number of IORs on a large project. IORs feeling bullied to pass inspections by the construction group. What can you do about these things? Well, go straight to the source and speak with them. If you're having a problem with ownership, we recommend you would sit down and discuss that with them, or with the DPOR. If you feel you need more involvement, express that to them. In any event, you can always go to the jurisdiction after you've tried to work out the situation with the construction team member. We can get some support from them, and Monica will talk a little bit more about how they'll be supporting us. There are no easy solutions, but we can take proper steps to try to mitigate these things. So for our points to remember, we're running out of time here. Here are the key points for the inspection group to remember. Ask yourself, do you have an inspect to pass mentality? Do you support your IORs in having an inspect to pass mentality? We should be guided by a set of principles, not a detailed list of what to do under every possible situation. Do not set unsubstantiated rules that exclude ownership. So the IOR must be responsible about how he approaches this. So inspect to pass does not mean that the inspectors are pushover or passing inspections at all costs. It's a mentality. It's built on collaboration, transparent, tactful communication, and proactivity. Now it's time for us to pass off the remainder of this final section on the perspective of HCAI. We'll be passing that off to Monica Colosi, please.
Thank you, Michael. And let me explain the last part, the HCAI perspective. All for us is the same as for the other presenters. We are part of the team. We all work on one goal. And so we are like a chair where each of us is a leg. It doesn't matter about the project delivery. We work in a collaborative manner. We are all responsible in different ways, but we are all responsible toward the success to the project. HCAI, we have core values: service, equity, innovation, and professionalism. And for this purpose, I want to highlight how we focus on the professionalism, because we are public servants. We listen, we want to understand, and we communicate with purpose and clarity. Our goal is to treat everyone with respect and communicate without arrogance and have a better attitude, because we listen. We want to understand the problems. We want to try to anticipate the issues. Where possible, we find solutions. We can propose the solutions. Of course, we don't direct the work because we observe the work, but this doesn't stop us providing possible solutions. And ultimately, it is the design professional decision with the owner and with the contractor to determine the best approach. HCAI has a responsibility, of course. We review changes on the construction document. They can be ACD, NMA, and we can review, sign off the TIO, constantly be in communication with the construction team. We go to the job site, we observe the construction, of course, and we walk the site with the IOR, but also we encourage to have a job site walk with the design professionals, with the contractor, and when possible, with the owner PM as well. The purpose of the job walk is not to try to find a mistake. It's a wrong approach. It's punitive and it doesn't help the project. We don't want to put anybody on the spot. We don't want to enforce things that are not necessarily enforceable, shock the contractor or embarrass the IOR. This will be wrong for the collaborative approach. We issue field reports. We issue substantial compliance, certification of occupancy, TIO reviews, construction final. We strongly encourage the design professionals to upload every time the latest TIO into Acela so it is available to everybody. It's not a code requirement, but we encourage to do so. Like I said before, we observe the inspector work. This means that we monitor their performance. Inspection Service Unit, where I am proudly part of, works on the certification examination. We work on the recertification. We have ongoing training. We monitor the IOR. If it is necessary, we provide guidance measures, how to correct whatever they need to improve. Our goal is to have everybody to succeed. It's a little delay. So that last couple years have been richer than usual because Inspection Service Unit had the Construction Administration Proficiency, CAP. We also have Tip of the Day, where we provide information like observation reports, IOR voluntary daily reports template, which we will talk later in next slides. For the CAP, Construction Administration Proficiency, this is a voluntary program, and Inspection Service Unit provides webinars prerequisite for whoever wants to take the CAP exam. Again, this is a voluntary program, but in order to take the exam that is also voluntary, the webinar is a prerequisite. We're going to have this annually, and in September, we issue an update for the dates for the webinar and for the voluntary exam. And because the webinar is tough to have the people truly concentrate, we didn't have 2 sessions on the webinar. We had only one, but this time it was way more interactive, and we had poll questions. The couple webinar happened on November 20th. The exams are right now in Los Angeles while we are speaking, and in a couple of weeks, the exams will be in Sacramento. Once the people pass the exam, we list who passed the exam and get the certificate. And the list is posted on our website, HCAI website. Tip of the day, we are over 100 tips. All the tips of the day are available so everybody can have access, no excuses. There is the subscription for the tip of the day. So for any upcoming one, the people can get the notification via email easily, or at least we're trying for. The tip of the day, like I mentioned before, is about the observation report. There is a difference between inspection and observation. The inspector inspects. The design professional, contractor, owner observe the work. We also, like I said before, observe the work. Thank you, Belinda, by highlighting the need to obtain personal knowledge as DPOR by being at the job site. Having full engagement at the job site is the best thing that can happen on a project. Knowing what's going on helps tremendously how to arrive to a resolution of a potential problem on site. At the facilities where I am assigned, I'm very pleased to say that I meet with the IOR, the design professionals. I constantly have communication with the entire team, including the contractor. Can be in the trailer or can be while we are doing the job walk. At the end of the specific milestone, the stakeholder needs to issue a verified compliance report. Each individual needs to issue a verified compliance report to where applicable. The tip of the day clarifies items that could be maybe confusing. So we hope that with these tips, those items get clarified. The tip of the day is the inspector of record voluntary daily report template. Why did we issue this voluntary template? Unfortunately, it happens that inspectors don't provide a detailed report. They only provide weather condition or saying that they walked the job site. And this is not sufficient for us when we look their daily reports to determine what really happened at the job site. So the template helps to keep track on what is necessary per code to be provided. And the next slide shows how is this template. It's very simple. There are code requirements and where they are applicable. Like I mentioned before, we are public servants. Yes, we observe the construction, we issue reports, we monitor the inspectors, but we also want to know if we are performing good. There is never-ending improvement. We want always to get better, and we cannot get better if we don't know on what we defect with. So there is a public survey which helps us to understand where we need to improve. This is not punitive. If we don't know what to change, where to improve, you will continue to feel unsatisfied with our performance. So you are welcome to let us know, but use also the survey for good. If we are doing good, please let us know too. And guess what? You can decide to be anonymous as well. So again, no excuses. You please do the survey. I know it's difficult, but we encourage the people to contact us. There is never a silly question. If the person wants to know something, it means that that person doesn't know that specific thing. So there is nothing silly. We need to pay attention to your needs. We need to pay attention on what is not clear to you because we are here for you. Tell us and we can help you. Needs to be approved in order to be constructed. So the project gets approved, needs to have building permit, which includes the notice to start construction, the TIO field approved, and these are all code requirements. Once finally everything is in place with a building permit, there is an important step, the kickoff meeting. The pre-construction meeting is beneficial to allow everybody to be in the same room, to break the ice, to grow as a team. Discuss expectations, schedule, approach, allow everyone to be on the same page. And this meeting should be the owner, the contractor, the designer, the inspector, and also HCAI. Then finally, the contractor can start the construction, and the contractor needs to build a per-approved construction document. And what does the IOR do? Inspect what has been built and verify that everything is in compliance with the approved construction document. It's simple. Is linear, but of course it's construction, and guess what? It's complicated. The process for HCAI to observe to pass needs to maintain a linear process and as simple as possible, ideally. So the project gets approved. Quality and performance are together in order to follow the construction schedule. Maintain communication between all parties. The inspector performs inspections that are supposed to pass, but it happens that inspections fails. Why did they fail? Maybe because the contractor performance, or maybe because the construction document needs to be revised. Either way, the cycle will restart. And so once the construction gets realigned with an NMA or with an ACD, the inspection will come again, and the inspection hopefully pass. How HCAI field staff contributes and observe to pass, we review NMAs in short time. We pre-review ACDs, and because in communication with the team, we will know what can be field reviewed, or if it needs to go to the office. When we need to issue a substantial compliance, certification of occupancy, construction final, we do as fast as possible to avoid any delay for the facility to use that specific area. If there is a problem, we don't just highlight the problem. We are going to provide, again, solutions that help the project to move forward in a successful manner. This is our job. This is how HCAI observes to pass. Then be said. Now, Michael, back to you.
Thank you, Monica. Well, there you have it. So how could we summarize what we've considered today? Owners, be involved. You initiate the project, you guide the project, you oversee the project, you pay for the project, you utilize the final product. No one has greater vested interest in the success of the project than you do. Your close involvement is critical to success. So strategize to pass. Your decisions lay the groundwork of success or failure. Your hiring and other decisions have a profound effect on project success. Designers, the final product, the finished building, is the physical manifestation of your conceptual designs. You are ownership's designated leader of the project. The code describes you as the figurative captain of the ship on a construction project. Only you can interpret the design intent of the approved documents. So please, design to pass. Contractors, it's you who transform the designer's conceptual design to a physical reality. Your efforts make it possible for the people of the community and the hospital staff to have a safe, sustainable place to provide and receive health care. So please, build to pass. Inspectors, IORs and special inspectors, you play an important role in the success or failure of the project. You play an important role on how the entire construction team perceives their experience in participating in the project. You are the surrogate face of OSHPD on a day-to-day basis. You are the proxy face of compliance. Remember your obligations. Inspect to pass. and OSHPD. You're involved at all levels, jurisdictionally, oversight of the project. You adopt and enforce the building codes. You review and improve plans. You check on the performance of the IOR. You're the referee for all the activities of the construction team. So your support is paramount for the project to be successful. So please support to pass. Would like to thank all our presenters this afternoon for the hard work that they put into preparing this information. And now we're going to turn it back over to Gary Dunger for the final part of this presentation, and that'll be the consideration of some questions and answers. Gary, it's all yours.
Michael, thank you. And thank you to all the presenters. I think this was a really good presentation, a lot of good information. I learned a lot. So there were quite a few questions that were added during the presentations. Some of them that were not answered real time, I'll go through and ask individual presenters to speak to them. So Monica, lucky you, I'm going to start with you. This question is, when is the next training session for CAP for the participation in the next exam? And how long is the CAP certificate valid for?
Thank you, Gary. The CAP exam, actually the certification, let's start with that, is valid per each code cycle. Currently, we're doing the exam based on the 2022. Next year, we start basing the CAP exam with the 2025 code. The webinar and the exam are annual, like I explained before. We're trying to follow the standard. Is new process. Again, we're doing for a couple years and never-ending improvement. We try to arrive to a sort of finesse for the timing for the webinar and for the exam. So on September, usually we are planning to issue a tip of the day with the registration for the webinar that will happen in November, ideally before the holidays. And the exam will be in January, like just happened. And we're going right now to do the January exam.
Great, awesome, thank you. Next question, I think this is, Belinda, for you, although other presenters may want to weigh in. From HCAI's perspective, what inspection-related issue most often turns into a change order? And what early coordination steps can construction managers take to prevent those issues?
Oh, you had to pick me, right? So I think the common one that I do see turning into change orders is misalignment in kind of design intent and what was done in the drawings versus what actually gets installed in the field. I think sometimes whether it's not having the right people at the table in the beginning when you put those details in the drawings, there's a lot of assumptions being made on how it was going to be put together. But without the trade partners there, without the actually subs who are doing the install, a lot of times things get put in differently, than what's been shown in the drawings. And that often causes a lot of consternation. And we often have to figure out a solution right there to figure out how to get that either changed back to what it shows in the contract documents or to actually then modify our drawings, which then takes time for the design team to have to put another ACD together to document the change last minute and to get that all reviewed. And that comes as a costly change to the owner themselves because of this change that should have been anticipated, but a lot of times, without having the right folks on board together to determine what really wants to be built out there, that often happens.
Cool. Michael, anything you want to add to that?
No, not at this time. Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Next one, Michael. You don't get off the hook. How should inspection findings be used to support legitimate compliance change orders without normalizing avoidable rework? I think that's kind of related to the previous one, but different.
I'm not sure if I understand exactly what the intention of the question is. I'm looking for it right now.
Findings be used to support legitimate compliance change orders. I think I would read this to, if an inspection finding identified a code related issue or an incomplete document, how can that be used to support the rework or to avoid the rework and change order? Or maybe I might take a stab at this answer. To me, inspection is not just when the work is being completed. To me, the IORs need to be involved in the project early. They should be familiarizing themselves with the plans. They should be reviewing the construction documents. And if you find something that's questionable or wrong, document that, address it to the appropriate person, whether it's the design professional of record or to owner or to HCAI, and get it dealt with before it becomes late or before perhaps see if an ACD can be avoided. Let's pick another one. This is a long one, Michael, but I think it's yours as well. It says, in the inspect to pass quote, something is the inspect to pass quote something HCAI is advertising and enforcing to use / quote directly? While I understand the intention of the phrase, as a part of an IOR firm, the verbiage concerns me greatly as it merits more of the what is done, what it doesn't mean definition rather than the mentality we aim for within our projects. Inspect to compliance or something of that nature has set a little better with our IORs and is what we generally steer towards to mitigate any misunderstandings of what that process actually means. Also has helped alleviate some of the challenges listed on the challenge slide. So back to the question, is the inspect to pass quote something HCAI is advertising and enforcing?
Well, it's not something directly from OSHPD. It is to the extent that it's part of this webinar. But the phrase was coined up at Stanford Hospital by one of our former board members, and it seemed to be very suggestive of that attitude that the IOR should have. Does he want to inspect in such a way that leads towards passing inspections? Is he collaborative toward that goal? Contrasting that to inspect to fail. I think we all know exactly what that is. That's picking it apart or determinedly looking for something in order to fail it, or withholding information that one sees early in the process, going into the construction, not saying something and waiting until the IR is delivered. So I don't know that I'm directly answering your question. I think you're contending that the title inspect to pass versus inspect to comply, or your other suggestion. So it's really just meant to highlight that mental attitude, and maybe there are some better ways that it can be stated, which we're always open to improving. But right now, that was the primary objective as it was coined and as it was taken on by the board and decided it would expand in this presentation, is the focus on that right attitude, that mental mindset of collaboration and positivity and getting the inspections passed, but only if they're done the right way. Gary, back to you.
Thank you. Next question, and I think this was targeted at my presentation. Is the IOR expected to be performing inspections on a daily basis while they're walking the project? I've heard IORs say that they're performing inspections only if they receive an inspection request submitted by the contractor. To me, the answer to that question is Title 24 is actually pretty clear on this. It requires IORs to continuously inspect the projects. That means to me, when you're walking the project and you're looking at how the work is being completed by the contractors and subcontractors, if you see something wrong, you need to bring it up. Now, is that an inspection, quote unquote? I mean, that may be terminology, but the idea of continuous inspection is not to wait until it's done to say, gotcha, you did it wrong. The idea of continuous inspection is to identify stuff early and avoid rework. Now, the inspection request program is a component of continuous inspection. And that falls under what I would characterize more as periodic inspection. So I don't know if I hope that answers the question. Next, let me find the next question for somebody new here. Michael, I think this is back to you. In regards to the TIO required test inspection, what is the best practice for the design professional to work with the lab to verify or ask for information, since labs are hired by the owner? And should the design professional contract the owner first? That might be a combo Belinda-Michael question.
Well, typically on these projects, the lab is hired by the owner. That has to be that way. Then the IOR has some oversight as far as scheduling them, reviewing reports, presenting reports to the OSHPD field staff. So the IOR is in the middle of that. I need to reread that full question. That was a long one to understand exactly what we're trying to get at. Belinda, feel free to jump in with anything from because it is asking from a designer side.
Sure. No, I think what we've been doing, which has worked out, is we identify all the Section BC tests that we're going to need for the project, and then figuring out who the actual responsible party would be is in conjunction with the owner and the IOR to identify who those typically are. And I think the trick too now is that there's a more stringent requirement. I think it's always been there, but to show the sample test reports as part of our TIO submission. And I think what we are trying to do internally now is, knowing that this is a requirement and not have to go hunt and peck for them all the time, is for anything that we currently have on current projects to keep them, as a reference point or as a template or sample that we can easily find to use as a reference point, especially since we use a lot of these folks, same folks all the time, so that we can actually start creating a catalog and library of these. And if for anything new, for a home inspector or a lab that we're not familiar with, it's just reaching out to them and getting them to send us some sample reports. But the key is just to know who we're targeting early on so that we can assemble all the information quickly. But again, it's just communicating with the owners and anybody else who you think is appropriate to make sure that you get the right info for the TIO approval.
Good answer. I think we have time for one more. And a new one just popped up that looks pretty good too. This one says, should an inspection request be used to ensure the IOR has reviewed the drawings prior to the start of construction to ensure pre-construction review has been completed? That's an interesting question, and I think the answer to that would be no. I think it's the familiarization by the IOR with the construction documents doesn't precede or precipitate from an inspection request. In theory and in practice, the familiarization occurs before the contractors and subcontractors are even mobilized and doing the project. So that familiarization and that review of the construction documents occurs very, very early. And of course, when an inspection request is submitted, then the IOR will re-familiarize him or herself with the documents so that they know exactly what it is they're going out to look at.
I think, Gary, if I can offer something, I think, we've been using page turns or meetings, like pre-construction meetings, just to get everybody who's going to participate an introduction to the project, to understand the basic design and to understand where all the information is, so that it's not brand new and you have all the designers in the room to kind of explain their scopes of work. I think that's often very helpful for folks to understand what they're going to be inspecting, what the scope of services will be. And then they also know who to ask in the future if there's any questions. So the familiarity is really not to just throw the whole thing over the fence, but to try and preview and to get everybody brought up to speed in the beginning, to kind of hopefully not require a lot of questions later.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think we're at time. My clock says it's 2:59. So, Monica, I think you have some closing comments for us, and then we will be done for the day. Thank you, everybody, for the excellent questions and participation.
Gary, and at this point, we want to thank you all for attending this webinar. Again, please send specific questions to HBSB support staff at hcai.ca.gov. This concludes our presentation for today. We truly want to thank you for your interest in expanding your knowledge and learn more about the collaborative inspection approach to hospital construction. So until next time, stay healthy and stay safe. Goodbye.